building a better Bay Area, moving forward, finding solutions. This is ABC 7 News.
Hi there, I'm Kristen Z. You're watching Getting Answers live on ABC 7, Hulu Live, and wherever you stream. We're asking experts your questions every day at 3 to get answers for you in real time. Now, California and the Bay Area, we've experienced a spike in COVID-19 cases over the holiday weekend. Perhaps no surprise, but this may surprise you. We now know that our numbers now have surpassed the peak of last winter's surge. The number of people in the hospital is quickly rising as well. ABC 7 News special correspondent Dr. Lok Patel is a member of our vaccine team. He will be joining us shortly to break down the latest headlines. But first, as the Omicron variant spreads, there are concerns over sending children back to school following the holidays. Many parents are asking, will my kids be safe? Joining us now to answer your questions is Dr. Yvonne Maldonado, a Stanford pediatric infectious disease specialist and a member of the Pediatric Advisory Panel for the CDC, and she led the Pfizer trial for 6-month to 11-year-olds, as you might recall. Dr. Maldonado, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here.
You know, the timing is really not good. You tell me if Omicron is actually peaking right now. It certainly is spreading fast, and that's happening right as kids are going back to school, right? So given that, what do you think? Because parents want to know, is this a safe environment for my kids to go back to?
Yeah, you know, it's really unfortunate. We just can't seem to cut a break here. We thought we would be heading into a good year, and maybe it is going to be a good year, but Omicron is still demonstrating how transmissible it is. There are record numbers of infections all around the country, all around the world, and here in the Bay Area as well. You know the numbers. We're seeing lots of hospitalizations, lots of cases, but we do have vaccines. So I think one of the things that's remarkable is that we are not seeing 5 to 11-year-olds being vaccinated at the rates that they should be. Now, in the Bay Area, we're doing great, but we really need to ramp those numbers up. We're at 85% or so of all people eligible 5 and older are fully vaccinated, but we need to get that number up and really just watch out for this surging virus, because it's not going to go away in the next few weeks.
It is not. And in fact, that's when kids are coming back. And as you said, the vaccination rate is not as high as a lot of doctors certainly hope they would be. What are they for 12 to 17s and for 5 to 11s?
Well, for 12 to 17-year-olds, the numbers are closer to 60% nationwide. But for 5 to 11-year-olds, remember that that vaccine was approved in November for 5 to 11-year-olds. We're really facing something like 20, 30%. We're really not where we should be there. And my sense is there's a lot of reasons for that, but part of it could be families just not thinking the kids are going to get sick. We are seeing kids get pretty sick and they're being hospitalized. So not high risk, but definitely a risk.
Who are the kids who are hospitalized for COVID? Do you have enough data there to be able to say the pattern is if they tend to be unvaccinated children?
Well, we haven't gotten really great data from the CDC at this point. The last update was quite a while ago. But what we know just from our colleagues around the country and here at Stanford is about half of the kids are actually have underlying conditions. The most common one, though, is obesity and asthma. So we have to be really careful because so many kids do have those conditions. But the rates really are primarily, we're seeing hospitalizations primarily in kids who are under a lot of underlying conditions, other things besides obesity and asthma.
All right, so with kids going back in person, and as you know, the Bay Area schools are still sounding the note that we are coming back in person, even though I'm now hearing more and more schools on the Northeast, for example, Philadelphia, even Chicago, a lot of them are starting out remote now this semester. What would you tell parents as they consider whether this is safe for my kids?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I've been talking to a number of people about this. I work with the American Academy of Pediatrics, and we have always maintained that we can send kids back to school safely as long as the environment is safe for them. And that means everybody should be vaccinated. So anybody 5 and older should really be vaccinated. That won't stop everything, but it'll help. We should make sure that ventilation and spacing and distancing are kept well under control. When children are eating together, they really should be spaced apart because we know that's another factor. So we're doing everything you can in the environment to make it safer for kids at this point. And if, again, children under 5 have the highest risk, obviously, because they're not vaccinated or can't be vaccinated. And so there are different precautions that we need to make sure people double down on for those younger kids.
So the factors that you mentioned that would mitigate the risk, right? Not eating lunch together indoors, better ventilation. For example, I know Marin County schools are now saying, hey, you know, athletic events, sporting events, practices, no parents, no spectators, only the players. They're trying to, you know, keep indoor assemblies to a minimum or not do them with large crowds. Those are all good things to minimize risk. But don't you think that without regular testing, that is still going to be problematic because there are just going to be too many cases undetected. And as you said, still a large percentage, you know, even here in the Bay Area, not vaccinated in that age group.
Well, you know, that's one of the, Kristen, that's one of the real problems that I have with the way we ramped up. I think the vaccines were stunning. We did a great job there overall in the US. But rapid testing really failed. We fell flat on our faces there. We should have had rapid testing a long time ago. We've had 2 years and we just haven't done a good job. So we do need to have better access to rapid testing. Try to find a test right now. It's not easy.
Right.
If the schools have them, they should be distributing them. And we've been hearing from all of you in the news about schools that are getting them out. And you know, if you don't have lots of tests available, at least make sure your child gets one test before they go back to school. And that way you can at least make sure that kids are not asymptomatically infected. And certainly if anybody has a cold, you know, for example, I have a cold right now, I tested it, I'm negative, but I'm still not going to be around other people because even if you're not COVID infected, you don't want to infect people with any other virus either.
Yeah.
So those are the common sense things we can do right now.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with you about, you know, and my kid got a test kit from his school with instructions to upload the negative test result before, you know, coming back to school. And that's great, but that's one kit, right? And they're not going to keep that up, I don't think. And if you don't have accessible testing at this point, that could still become problematic. So I do want to ask you, you mentioned kids under 5. Obviously, they cannot get vaccinated yet, but there are kids in that congregate setting in preschools and all that. But I know you're also running trials. You're looking at how to deliver a safe vaccine to, you know, 0 to 4s. So where are we at with that? What is the timing and what will that look like?
Well, we're still in the middle of those studies. So unfortunately, as you probably heard, the 2 to 5-year-old dosing didn't work out so well. So the adult dose, that is from 12 and older, that dose is 30 micrograms of Pfizer vaccine. And for the 5 to 11-year-olds, a third of that dose, or 10 micrograms, works really well. So we dropped the dose to 3 micrograms. So that's 1/10 of the adult dose for the under 5s. For the 6 to 23-month-olds, it seems to have worked well, but for the 2 to 4-year-olds, it did not. So we're still trying to figure out what to do next. It looks like Pfizer may want to do a 3-dose study and see if a third dose of 3 micrograms will actually do the trick and get the antibody levels up where we want them to be. So the unfortunate news is it doesn't look like we'll have vaccines for kids under 5 for at least another few months.
Okay. Boy, that can't come soon enough. Look, our time is running out, but I do want to just go there one more time about, you know, going back to school. Is there anything inherently about that setting that makes it safer or more dangerous than the community at large? That is, look, we're all getting an Omicron surge right now. That is happening here in the Bay Area and elsewhere. Is there any reason, you know, looking at what they do at schools to say, you know, that's more dangerous? Or should parents feel like, you know what, if they're managing it the way that my school is with all those factors you mentioned, it's fine. It's okay.
What we've seen overall, it's a great question. I have 3 kids, they're adults now, but I'm trying to put myself in that place again. The schools are safe. They're safer than being in the community. In some cases, they're safer than being at home where people might be coming in and out. So I would really encourage families to keep the household visits to a minimum. And if the schools are doing everything right, that is a very controlled environment for kids to work in. And you have people supervising them all day long. So it is really the best case scenario, certainly better than being out in the community. So I do think it's a good way to go. And children really suffered for not going to school for the last year or so. And I really think it's hard to go back.
Yeah. I mean, as a parent, I Completely agree with you. I think, like you said, if you can eliminate some of the risks that you don't need to take right now and keep your eyes on the prize, and that's keeping the kids, academically going, let's all try to do that. Really appreciate your time and insight today, Dr. Yvonne Maldonado of Stanford. Take care.
You too. Thanks.
Coming up next, we'll talk to Dr. Lok Patel. He's going to join us to talk about this massive surge in COVID cases that we're seeing across California and in the Bay Area. We'll be right back. Get your questions ready. All right, everybody, here we are on Facebook Live. I am back. Took a little bit of a break over the holidays, so it's good to be with you again. I hope you had a good one and a safe one. I have to say, anecdotally, I'm hearing of a lot of people who caught COVID in the past few weeks, and for most people, it seems like they had very minor symptoms. That's something we'll talk to Dr. Patel about, whether there is something qualitatively different about Omicron or is it simply a difference in severity of symptoms. We'll get into that. And if you have any questions about whether your symptoms are normal or, what you can expect. And I know a lot of people are now also asking the question, hey, should I just get this over with? We'll put this question to Dr. Patel as well. So anyway, nice to be back. Glad you guys are all still here. Let's see. Let me read some of your comments here. Rachel, thank you for your welcome back comment. Steve Hall, we all have to learn to live with COVID. That is true. I think nobody disputes that it's about management because it's not going to be eradicated the way it looks. And the way doctors tend to say learning to live with COVID is, hey, let's not all go get sick at once and flood the hospitals at once. Let's, buy time, so to speak, right? Get more therapeutics developed, get more people immunity through vaccine preferably, but also natural immunity as people get sick. So we'll see. Check out some of the other comments here. Daniel, thank you for your welcome back comment. It's so nice to hear from you. Rachel, we have to test our kids Sunday night before they return Monday, and I love that. Right, so that's the same with my kiddo. They got a kit with 2 tests, and they have to take them over, I think, like a 3-day period. That's great, but my point to Dr. Maldonado is like, hey, that's just a one-shot deal. What about when they all get back together and go to classes and do sports for, like after a week, 2 weeks, and no more testing? Like, it should just be really accessible. All right, coming back. California saw a major surge in COVID-19 cases over the holiday weekend. The state reported an average of nearly 59,000 cases a day from New Year's Eve through yesterday. This is far surpassing the peak of last winter's surge. Here to talk about this dramatic surge and to provide insight on when this surge might peak, Dr. Lok Patel. He's part of the ABC 7 News vaccine team. Hello, Dr. Patel. Good to see you.
Kristen, it's good to see you. Happy 2022. Maybe we have a much better and brighter year.
I certainly do hope so. I tell you, I said this last year for 2021, so now I don't want to get my hopes up, but we have reason for hope. We have reason for hope.
We do.
Right? But not right now, because we are seeing the numbers, and they do suggest, whoa, we're peaking higher than we did last winter, and that was scary and deadly and so terrible. Put these latest numbers in context for us.
Well, Kristen, you're absolutely right. We are peaking at higher numbers, but there's 2 things that people have to take into account. Is number one, this is, as you've heard for the past now about a month, it's a much more transmissible and contagious variant. But also, positive cases alone don't tell the full story because hospitalizations are not rising as quickly as the cases are. They are rising, but it doesn't look like it's completely correlated. And also, we're seeing positive cases now in a population that is largely vaccinated, especially right here in San Francisco, and also people who have been infected in the past. So that's why there's a lot of people out there who are testing positive for SARS-CoV-2, but they're not going on and developing severe illness. So it's important to look at case numbers, but then take it into context.
Yeah, I mean, that is definitely good news, bad news. Now, some people look at this and say, okay, I surrender. COVID's going to get all of us. And I guess with Omicron, now's the time. Not that they're courting it, but I definitely hear some reasonable people now saying, well, it's going to get me at some point. So, is this it? I mean, have we put it off long enough that we have treatment now? We have, a lot of people vaccinated and the hospitals are okay here in the Bay Area, at least, that it's not okay, but some people are saying, okay, if I get it, I get it. What do you think about that line of thinking?
I think it's completely reasonable for people to have that complacency and also a little bit of the acceptance and basically preparing for the fact that Omicron will come and try to infect you. It's going to happen. If you're living a life that is outside of a bubble, you should be prepared to run into Omicron, which means what? It means that number one, you're taking care of yourself and your family, you're fully vaccinated, but you're also cognizant of the fact that it's not just about you. So a lot of people out there are very cavalier and saying, I'm going to catch COVID, I'm not worried about it. But remember, you may inadvertently expose somebody else who might be high risk, may not be vaccinated, such as a young child, or somebody who's working in the front line, like a police officer, paramedic, firefighter, or a doctor or nurse. And that causes a lot of issues. Also teachers as well. So you have to think about this on the individual level. It may not be a big deal. If you're fully vaccinated, including all 3 shots, you're healthy, you don't have underlying medical conditions, I'm not that worried about you on an individual level. But as a population and looking at the damage this can cause to society, that's another conversation.
It is one that a lot of people don't want to think about, but that in itself is another conversation, Dr. Patel. I want to ask you about what is going on the university level. Today, you heard Stanford announce that they're going to make some changes to their athletic events, right? So no more spectators, not even parents. Oh my goodness, sport parents like me are going, oh no, but it's just the players, and they're trying to, limit that indoor spread. First of all, do you think that makes sense? Actually, I should point out Marin County schools are about to embark on that same path. Does that make sense to you?
It's so hard to say that it makes sense to me. I would need to look at this on an individual basis. Now, if it's an outdoor event and people are not actually allowed to go there, that makes zero sense to me, especially if people are fully vaccinated.
It's the indoor ones.
Indoor.
Yeah, it's the indoor.
So if it's indoor and we are reducing the number of people there and we're doing this for a short time, again, we have talked about this multiple times, Kristen. If we're going to do this in terms of indoor events, there needs to be, in my humble opinion, an off-ramp. There needs to be an endpoint. We need to be able to say, hey, this is only going to be for 2 or 3 weeks in January while we see if this actually does hit that peak that it's modeled to hit. I don't think this is something that needs to be in for a full place. People have gotten vaccinated. We have proof that that is protection against that. And we should just wait and see what happens in the month of January. If we need to restrict some things, that's fine, and then go from there.
All right. Well, aside for the money factor, should the same rules apply to professional sports games then?
So if professional sports games can actually validate whether or not you've been vaccinated, and if that is not enough, they can actually look to see if there's a negative test involved. That's a completely different conversation. I don't know if they're able to do that at the same level at college sports and what you were mentioning with Marin schools. So again, it's a different conversation. If this is a Warriors game, for example, I went to a Warriors versus Suns game. Unfortunately, the Suns lost, my team. But they verified
not unfortunate. You want to argue about that? Let's go. Okay, wait, no,
I'm sorry. I know this is the Bay Area. But they checked everyone's vaccination status, and masks were required inside the stadium. They could do the same thing and say, hey, instead of a mask, you need to be wearing a 3-layered surgical mask, KN95. They could hand them out. There is a way to do this.
Yeah. Look, I mean, you could do that as well in college games, right? I mean, of course, greater ramifications for professional sports. But I get your point. I get your point. You take on the layers of protection, right? And then that reduces the risk. And you're also looking at the rewards versus the risk. So no doubt there are rewards. Okay, I want to also ask you about going back to school. I started to talk about this with Dr. Maldonado. But, many parents are still wondering, as they look at the broader situation, what are the different layers that they should tell their kids and really emphasize to their kids to take on to ensure that they can maximize their safety at school?
I think the most important thing, and I am trusting that other physicians have said this as well, other public health experts, is if your child is of eligibility to get a vaccine, that hopefully they've already gotten their first 2, and then depending on the age of your child, they're able to get a booster as well. That is not going to make the biggest dent right now if your child hasn't been vaccinated, because that takes some time to build up that immunity, and we know that Omicron is here immediately. So vaccination is obviously the first thing. Also wearing a high quality mask. And like I just mentioned, that needs to be, that means that a triple layered surgical mask, or there are some masks that kids can wear that are well fitting. They have that good kind of seal. I don't know if every kid out there has access to a KN95, a KF94, but that is the optimal mask right now. And also I think parents should take a vested interest and talk to the school district and say, what are you doing in terms of spacing? Are you staggering classes? What does testing look like? How many of these teachers are vaccinated? Is there going to be a push with ventilation? Like, all these matter. Every one of these is what we talk about when we mention layered protection. And at the end of the day, and we've said this for more than a year now, schools really need to be the last to close and the first to open. I cannot stand the fact that in some parts of the country, we're seeing bars open and schools closed. Doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. All right. Hey, don't go away because we'll take a short break and then be right back with Dr. Patel. I'm going to ask him to look into his crystal ball and let us know when the Omicron surge will be over and talk about this new variant in France. That's quite concerning. Join us on Facebook Live. We'll answer some of your questions. All right, Dr. Patel, so many questions for you, so many. First of all, what is that? Is that a Betty White pin?
This is the late, great, the legend herself. Thank you for being a friend.
Oh, yeah. I mean, gosh, you know, I had so much hope for 2022, and then I heard about Betty White's passing, and then I thought, oh, gosh, you know.
I recommend anyone out there just Google some quotes from her. She clearly knew how to live her best life.
She did.
And I think it's super inspiring.
You're right. You're right. If we can all live such a life, you know, live to the fullest to age 99, that's pretty darn good. I like that tribute. Okay, Mark has a question for you. Dr. Patel, do you believe that the mask mandate rules are just repeating themselves over and over again with the same ingredients? I just believe that a different result is not being produced. I'm not sure about all of it, but I suspect some of it has to do with the constant, you know, seeming flip-flopping of you know, let's have the mandate again. Let's not. Let's keep, you know, so what do you think? I mean, there's some who say it should have just been kept in place the whole time.
I think the mask mandate right now makes sense in certain settings, especially because we have a lot of people gathering. Not everyone is boosted. As a matter of fact, only 30% of those eligible have got their third shot.
Yeah.
That's also an issue also. You know, and again, even if you're vaccinated and protected, that doesn't mean you can't get mild symptoms and pass it on to somebody else. And also, like, the science changes. Omicron was way more transmissible than anyone predicted. And I don't know, no one knows how this is going to truly affect the unvaccinated, those who are high risk, or what it could potentially do in terms of long COVID. So I'm not trying to run out there and catch Omicron and spread it to my 8-month-old daughter. I'm going to wear a mask when I'm in an indoor setting and I cannot verify the vaccination status of everyone around me.
All right, sounds good. Dr. Patel coming back in 10 seconds. By the way, who's this that says Dr. Patel is the best?
I think you're the best.
Aww. We are back with Dr. Lok Patel answering your questions over on Facebook Live. Now back to answer more questions. Look, okay, Tony here has a question for you. Is it safe to go to weddings and receptions indoors right now?
It depends if your wedding party is being responsible and they're verifying that all their guests are vaccinated, and they're even possibly taking a step further and getting them tested. Listen, I have a wife who works in this industry, and there are weddings that are going both directions. Some where they're saying, you know what, whatever, we're going to live our lives, and others where everyone is getting screened and tested. And I would definitely opt for the latter. And you got to weigh your individual risk there and who you're living with and what your situation looks like.
Yeah. It's just concerning because, as you know, more people are getting Omicron, having been fully boosted, right? And it hits you more quickly, so you might test negative today, but then the next day you present, and too bad, you've already been with 80 people. So
that's an extremely important point, Kristen.
Yeah.
That people can the rapid antigen test is a snapshot in time.
Yeah.
You cannot take a rapid antigen test today and say you're good for the next 5 days.
Yeah. So I know I see some of those weddings in which the host, spends $1,000 giving everyone antigen tests, and then I worry, look, that doesn't mean you won't keep all the cases. You might keep some out. You might keep some out. Just know it's not, 100%, and weigh what you want to do. Okay, Nicole has a great question. She's curious how the Omicron variant presents in children under 5 who don't qualify for the vaccine yet. Yeah, I was wondering myself if the variant, creates just less severity in symptoms or qualitatively different types of symptoms.
Well, one thing that it's really doing is it's tending to give young kids more of those upper respiratory symptoms. So instead of the lower lungs, so things like pneumonia and shortness of breath we saw in adults and older teens, these younger kids are presenting with what looks like an extremely bad cold. Some people out there might scoff at that and say no big deal, but remember, toddlers and babies cannot handle a really bad upper respiratory infection the same way as older people can. So that's why things like influenza and RSV are potentially deadly for certain infants. And we see kids in the ICU every season with these. And that's what Omicron looks like it's doing. There's some early lab data showing that it replicated much better in the nose than it does in the lungs, which makes those upper respiratory symptoms come alive, but also makes it really easy to spread because it's hanging out right there.
Yep. No, it is. And I'm hearing from some of my kiddos, friends, they're like, it's like a cold. I can't tell the difference between this and a cold, right? But hey, you could be giving it to a lot of people, and other people, they'll get more severe symptoms. We're just learning about a new COVID variant found in France. I know there are new variants popping up all the time. Is this one of concern, as they say?
Well, it's not been labeled as a variant of concern yet. So people might have seen this. It's trending on Twitter at hashtag IHU variant. I believe it's B16402. The World Health Organization right now is saying, like, nobody panic. But there's a couple things out there that has researchers' attention. Number one, this variant, this is non-peer-reviewed reporting that I heard has 46 mutations on it, which is a lot, more than Omicron.
Yeah.
And two of those mutations are E484K and N501Y. And those are the mutations, fancy numbers. Those are from the alpha and the beta variant. And there's a concern that that might actually make it more transmissible and potentially able to evade antibodies. Long story short, it's still early. We don't know everything. But remember, mutations happen all the time. It doesn't necessarily mean that the virus is going to run out and hurt you. And we have vaccines now. We have more natural immunity. And guess what? This is even more reason why we can't let the virus continue to replicate, because it will go and make more variants.
You are absolutely right. That's why don't be a host, right? If you can avoid it. Let's talk about the future of Omicron now. Get out your crystal ball. This is where you look into it deeply and tell us, when do we think this surge will pass, when Omicron will be, done?
I'm going to base this off of other models. I'm not going to pretend to be the mathematician here, and it looks like that surge is going to happen in the middle of January. Sorry, I should say the crest or the peak of the surge in the middle of January. But remember, we're already at 1 million positive cases a day. So how much higher is this really going to go?
Right.
So even after we pass that peak, we still are potentially going to have hundreds of thousands of positive tests every single day. And remember, even though the largest data set so far from the UK suggests that this variant is causing more mild illness, again, we don't know what that's going to do to everyone out there who's unvaccinated and high risk.
Right. And also, you can still have long COVID, right?
Absolutely. We are still seeing long COVID in kids. And it's horrific because the kids not all kids are vaccinated. Of course, we know that. Yeah. And also, we did a great job of protecting them. So not a lot of them have natural immunity. They're at grave risk of long COVID if they get infected by large numbers.
On that note, we'll take a break, but we'll continue to chat with Dr. Patel on Facebook Live. Dr. Patel, another great question for you coming in from Sandy. Dr. Patel, should we avoid indoor dining at restaurants in Contra Costa County right now? She also says, please bring your baby girl back on. She is so cute.
I appreciate that.
Yes, she is. Is she available?
She's hanging out. She's hanging out right here in her Giannis Milwaukee Bucks jersey. But she's napping right now, but she says hi.
Okay, your choice of sports teams. Okay, that's my only beef with you. That's all.
Listen, I'm Arizona. My wife is from Wisconsin.
Oh, okay.
Like that, the Bucks jersey, no.
All right.
But so I feel I'm on the fence with indoor restaurants personally. The reason why I'm avoiding them right now is because of my 8-month-old, because she is not vaccinated. I do not want to bring anything to her. If you're in a situation where there's an indoor restaurant, you had to judge, what does the ventilation look like? What does spacing look like? And also, are you in a place where they're actually checking vaccination status? I would wear a mask right now if I'm in an indoor business, if I'm somewhere like that, that I really assess the situation. For the time being, I'm probably avoiding a really crowded indoor bar or restaurant.
Yep. I have dined a couple times over break in indoor restaurants, and they require vaccination proof. And right now, that's the only way I'm comfortable, right now, knowing how infectious it is and how out there it is right now.
I was in Arizona and I avoided it because not only do they not require vaccines, there's a lot of people there who just don't believe in them.
Yeah, this is very true. Which leads me to Tammy's question. Are any of the breakthrough cases people who are also wearing masks? In other words, all 3 vaccines, boosted, and a mask?
I don't know if we've specifically teased out that statistic, but I can't imagine it's impossible because here's the thing. If you test positive, it's hard to tell what was the actual point in which you did that. Someone may be wearing a mask, may have taken it off, been with somebody else who didn't know that they were positive, and that's what makes it so tricky. But if you're fully vaccinated and you catch Omicron, odds are you're going to be completely fine. And when I say odds, I mean you have a very, very, very high level of protection.
All right. I mean, it's a game of odds, right? All right, Dr. Patel, thank you so much. Great seeing you, seeing the Laura's picture and the Betty White pin. See ya. Thank you so much for joining us on this interactive show, Getting Answers. Today, we answered your questions about Omicron impacting children and the winter COVID surge. We'll be here every weekday at 3 o'clock on air and on live stream answering your questions. World News Tonight is coming up next, and I'll see you back here at 4 o'clock. Bye-bye.